In 1947, at the time of independence, India had a population of 400 million, out of which 100 million were Muslims and 300 million were Sikhs and Hindus. 1 million people were killed and 10 million people became refugees during partition. In 2019, the Government of India enacted the Citizenship Amendment Act. This law would enable the persecuted minorities from India's three Islamic neighbors, namely Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Afghanistan, to get Indian citizenship with ease. Hindus and other minorities in Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Afghanistan have suffered terribly at the hands of Islamists. Eminent lawyers and jurists visited West Bengal and met with Hindu refugees who were forced out of East Pakistan in 1964. They published a report entitled Recurrent Exodus of Minorities from East Pakistan and Disturbances in India in 1965. Mr. M.C. Setalwad, who was the first Attorney General of India, and Justice S.M. Sekri, who later became Chief Justice of India, were authors of this report. This documentary uses the report published by these eminent jurists about the plight of Hindu minority in East Pakistan and now Bangladesh. Jinnah had called for direct action on 16th August 1946. Mr. Suharwardi, the Premier of Bengal, declared a public holiday on Direct Action Day in Bengal for achievement of Pakistan. From early morning of August 16, 1946, organized and well-armed gangs of Muslims led by Muslim League volunteers attacked Hindus. These killings went on unabated for 5 days. The Premier Suharwardi was sitting in the control room of the main police station. He was aware of what was happening in Calcutta as the police reports were conveyed to him minute by minute. The police, under his direct orders, was ordered not to interfere. This resulted in what came to be known as Great Calcutta Killings. Thousands of Hindus were massacred. Muslim League volunteers who carried petrol set fire to Hindu houses. Noakhali was also affected soon after, and massacres of Hindus took place there. The rest of Bengal remained peaceful. Mr. Jinnah condemned the acts of violence but said that he did not know who was responsible. By end of 1947, about 425,000 Hindus had migrated from East Pakistan to West Bengal. In West Pakistan, large-scale massacres of Hindus and Sikhs had started before partition. West Pakistan had practically been cleared of Hindus and Sikhs during partition. In East Pakistan, there were 13 million non-Muslims. Due to Gandhi's efforts, East Pakistan was relatively free from massacres before and after partition. The migration from East Bengal in 1946-47 was the result of Calcutta killing. These migrations were largely confined to large landowners, professionals, and white-collar workers. Majority of Hindus who lived in East Pakistan were small farmers and small traders. Even after 425,000 Hindus coming to present West Bengal, Assam, and state of Tripura, about 13 million non-Muslims lived in East Pakistan. Pakistan, after its formation, identified itself only with the aspirations of the Muslims. Discrimination against the non-Muslims was the rule. Hindus were 30% of the total East Pakistan population. In East Pakistan, Hindus were more educated and affluent. They ran industries and businesses. They dominated professions. The Muslim League government in East Pakistan terrorized Hindus. In 47, 59% of the total population in Dhaka was Hindus. Hindus owned 85% of the properties in Dhaka. After 1950, the Hindus owned only 12.7% of the properties in Dhaka. 90% of the Hindu citizens of Dhaka had migrated to India. Muslims seized most of the Hindu houses after 1947 in East Pakistan and threw the Hindus out of the country. On April 19, 1948, the Niyogi Ghulam Muhammad Agreement was signed between India and Pakistan. This was intended to ease the situation of minorities. Periodic meetings between the chief ministers or chief secretaries of West Bengal, Assam, Tripura, and East Bengal or East Pakistan were to be held to look into the working of that agreement. Despite this agreement, Hindu houses, land, and properties were forcibly occupied by Muslims. Hindu temples were attacked and idols broken. Forced conversions and forced marriages of Hindu women to Muslims continued. Rapes of Hindu women were common. In August of 1949, fresh violence broke out throughout East Pakistan or East Bengal, Hindu women were raped, abducted, forcibly converted, and married to Muslim men. Hindu properties were damaged, Hindu temples were vandalized. On 8th April 1950, Nehru, the Prime Minister of India, and Liaquat Ali Khan, the Prime Minister of Pakistan, signed an agreement which laid out a roadmap for minority rights in both the nations. The pact clearly laid out the commitment of both the nations to grant full rights to its minorities and pledged to safeguard their properties, occupation, places of worship, and dignity. Article A of this agreement said that each government shall ensure to the minorities throughout its territories complete equality of citizenship, irrespective of religion, full sense of security in respect of life, culture, property, and personal honor, freedom of movement within each country, and freedom of occupation, speech, and worship. It also stated that it is the policy of both governments that the enjoyment of democratic rights shall be assured to all citizens. Article B, which dealt with migrants from each country, provides, amongst other things, the freedom to move personal effects and household goods, including personal jewelry, and that the rights of ownership or occupancy of immovable property would not be disturbed. Those migrants who did not return would still have the ownership rights in their immovable properties and unrestricted rights to dispose it of by sale or exchange. Although the Nehru Liaquat Pact was intended to set up a machinery to ease the return of migrants and for setting a minority commission in both the countries by the end of 1950, so far as East Pakistan was concerned, the pact became practically a dead letter. Jogendra Nath Mandal, a prominent leader of the Dalits, had founded the Scheduled Caste Federation with Ambedkar. Mandal supported Jinnah and Muslim League's demand for Pakistan. He inspired the Dalits to vote for Sylhet to go to Pakistan. Since he had sided with Jinnah, Mandal was made the first Law Minister of Pakistan. On 9th October 1950, Mandal resigned from Liaquat Ali's cabinet as the Law Minister. He wrote a long letter to Liaquat Ali Khan where he traced his support to Muslim League and how he had helped Jinnah and the League in Bengal. He expressed disappointment with the treatment meted out to him and Dalits in East Pakistan or East Bengal. He not only resigned from Pakistan's cabinet, he came back to India as a refugee and died unsung and in total oblivion. A few prominent Muslim League leaders of Bengal approached me in February 1943. I agreed to work with them in Bengal Legislative Assembly. After the fall of Fazlul Haq ministry in March 1943 with a party of 25 scheduled caste MLAs, I agreed to cooperate with Khwaja Nazimuddin, the then leader of Muslim League Parliamentary Party, who formed the cabinet in April 1943. The principal objectives that prompted me to work in cooperation with Muslim League was first that economic interests of the Muslims in Bengal generally were identical with those of the scheduled caste. Muslims were mostly fishermen, cultivators, and laborers, and so were the members of the scheduled caste. The scheduled caste and Muslims are both educationally and economically backward. I was persuaded by League members that my cooperation with the League and the ministry would lead to undertaking on a wide scale of legislative and administrative measures which, while promoting the mutual welfare of the vast bulk of Bengal's population and undermining the foundation of vested interest and privilege, would further the cause of communal harmony and peace. After the general election held in March 1946, Mr. H.S. Suharwardi became the leader of the League Parliamentary Party and formed the League Ministry in April 1946. I was the only scheduled caste member returned on the Scheduled Caste Federation ticket. I was included in Mr. Suharwardi's cabinet. The 16th day of August of that year was observed in Calcutta as the Direct Action Day by the Muslim League. It resulted, as you know, in a Holocaust. Hindus demanded my resignation from the League ministry. My life was in peril. I began to receive threatening letters every day, but I remained steadfast to my policy. Moreover, I issued an appeal through our General Jagran to the scheduled caste people to keep themselves aloof from the bloody feud between the Congress and the Muslim League, even at the risk of my life. I cannot but gratefully acknowledge the fact that I was saved from the wrath of infuriated Hindu mobs by my caste Hindu neighbors. The Calcutta carnage was followed by the Noakhali riot in October 1946. In Noakhali riots, Hindus, including the scheduled castes, were killed and hundreds were converted to Islam. Hindu women were raped and abducted. Members of my community also suffered loss of life and property. Immediately after these happenings, I visited Tipura and Feni and saw some riot affected areas. The terrible sufferings of Hindus overwhelmed me with grief, but I still continued the policy of cooperation with the Muslim League. In October 1946, I was offered a seat in the interim government of India. I joined the interim government on 1st November 1946. After about a month, when I paid a visit to Calcutta, Mr. Suharwardi told me about communal tension in some parts of East Bengal, especially Gopalganj subdivision where Nam Sudras were in a majority. He requested me to visit those areas and address meetings of Muslims and Nam Sudras. I addressed about a dozen largely attended meetings. The result was that the Nam Sudras gave up the idea of retaliation against the Muslims. Thus, an inevitable dangerous communal disturbance was averted. I considered the demand of Pakistan by Muslim League as a bargaining counter. Muslims had legitimate cause for grievance against upper class Hindu chauvinism. I believed that the creation of Pakistan would worsen communal hatred and bitterness. I feared that Pakistan might turn out to be the most backward and underdeveloped countries of Southeast Asia. I presumed that Pakistan would be set up in all essentials after the pattern contemplated in the Muslim League resolution adopted at Lahore on March 23, 1940. That resolution stated adequate, effective, and mandatory safeguards should be specifically provided in the Constitution for minorities for the protection of their religious, cultural, economic, political, administrative, and other rights and interests in consultation with them. Every one of these pledges is being flagrantly violated, apparently to your knowledge and with your approval, and to the detriment and humiliation of the minorities. I was opposed to the partition of Bengal. In launching this campaign, I had to face not only tremendous resistance from all quarters, but also unspeakable abuse, insult, and dishonor. With great regret, I recollect those days when 32 crores of Hindus of Indo-Pakistan subcontinent turned their back against me and dubbed me as the enemies of Hindus and Hinduism, but I remained undaunted and unswerved in my loyalty to Pakistan. It is a matter of gratitude that my appeal to 7 million scheduled caste people of Pakistan evoked a ready and enthusiastic response from them. They lent me their unstinted support, sympathy, and encouragement. The atrocities perpetuated by the police and military on the innocent Hindus, especially the scheduled caste in the district Sylhet, beggars description. Innocent men and women were brutally tortured. Several women ravished, their houses raided, and properties looted by the police and the local Muslims. The large-scale exodus of Hindus from East Bengal commenced in later part of March. It appeared within a short time all the Hindus would migrate to India. A war cry was raised in India. The situation became extremely critical. A national calamity appeared to be inevitable. The apprehended disaster, however, was avoided by Delhi Agreement of April 8. But with the lapse of time, I began to realize that neither the East Bengal government nor the Muslim League leaders were really earnest in the matters of implementation of Delhi Agreement. The East Bengal government was not only much too slow to set up a machinery as envisaged in the Delhi Agreement, but also not willing to take effective steps for the purpose. Jogendra Nath Mandal further in his letter wrote how he felt betrayed by the actions of Pakistani government. The Dalits of Bengal had listened to him and voted in favor of Pakistan, but they were facing an existential crisis. They were left with no choice but to run to India as refugees. This is not what Muslim League Lahore resolution had promised them. He believed that Liaquat Ali Khan was aware of what the Muslims were doing to Hindus and Dalits in Pakistan, yet Khan was turning a blind eye to everything. Jogendra Nath Mandal, the messiah of Dalits in Bengal and a loyal supporter of Jinnah in Pakistan, came running to India, a totally broken and humiliated man. The Dalits of Bengal continue to suffer in Bangladesh, as evidenced by recent riots targeting Hindus.